Good evening. The man walking past the TVs wasn't supposed to exist, but there he was. No reflection trick, no glitch. My name is David. I'm a night electronics associate at a Walmart in Flagstaff, Arizona. Been working this shift since 2011. The graveyard schedule never changes. 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Stock, clean, reset displays. Help the occasional insomniac customer looking for HDMI cables or batteries. Nothing exciting ever happens here. Not really. At least, not anymore. When I started, the electronics department had this dull warmth to it. Carpeted floor back then. Brown shelves, CRT TVs buzzing low. Now it's all white plastic and LED blue. Too clean, too sterile, and too quiet after 2 a.m. That's when it gets weird. Not dangerous, just uneasy. Last night was colder than usual. The AC kept kicking in even though it wasn't hot. I had just finished straightening the movie racks. What's left of them anyway, when I caught a shape move across the flat screens on the back wall. We've got a whole panel of TVs set to display a looping store promo. It's muted, but the footage plays 24/7. Happy families, smiling cashiers, clean aisles, all fake. I saw the figure walk left to right, smooth. Not fast, not slow, just moving. I turned toward the actual floor, but no one was there. And yet the screens kept showing him. Tall, white shirt, dark pants, balding on top. A very specific kind of walk, too, like someone who used to own the floor, not just walking through it. I stepped back, blinked. The footage looped again. This time, no figure. Just the usual smiling employees frozen mid-wave. I didn't say anything at first, just stared at the blank aisle. It was aisle 6, near the wireless headphones. I walked over. Nothing was out of place. No carts, no customers, no co-workers, but my heart was already racing. It wasn't just the sight of someone on the TVs. It was the way he moved, like someone I hadn't seen in years, like someone who was gone. That's when it hit me. I recognized the walk. Frank Dawson, my old overnight supervisor, the one who vanished in 2007. Frank ran the night shift like a tight ship. No slacking, no wandering off. He kept a clipboard with everyone's name and task for the night. But he wasn't a jerk, just firm, fair, and quiet. Always quiet. He disappeared in March of 2007. No warning, no resignation. Just clocked in one night and never clocked out. Police came. They pulled tapes, interviewed staff. Nothing conclusive. One guy claimed he saw Frank go into the break room around 3 a.m. Another swore he passed him by the chemical closet near housewares. But the footage showed nothing. Literally nothing. No movement. Just blank frames between 2:58 and 3:11 a.m. His locker was locked. His truck was still in the lot. Eventually, corporate replaced him with a guy named Omar. Nobody talked about it again. And now, almost 2 decades later, I saw that same man walk across my TV wall. There was no mistaking it. The shoulders, the stride, the way his head tilted slightly to the right, like he was always listening to something over his shoulder. I don't scare easy, but I felt something crawl down my back. Not fear, not even surprise, just the cold knowledge that I was seeing something I shouldn't. That's the part I can't get past. It didn't feel like a ghost sighting. It didn't feel like hallucination. It felt like Frank had never left. Everything was in place, which made what happened next even harder to explain. The year Frank disappeared, I wasn't working electronics. I was in general merchandise, aisle 13. Stocking shampoo, air fresheners, laundry detergent. It was quieter back there, not in a good way. The lights flickered more. The radios barely worked. Sometimes you'd hear 2 songs playing at once. But Frank always made his rounds. Clipboard tucked under one arm, pen in the other. Always with that measured pace. Boots on waxed tile. It was one of the few constants on night shift. I remember the last time I spoke to him, March 14th, 2007, right after our second break. "Everything good back here?" he asked. I said yeah, that I was low on end cap labels. He nodded, scribbled something, moved on. That was it. That was the last thing he ever said to me. A couple hours later, I noticed Omar, who wasn't even a manager back then, walking around like he was looking for something, or someone. He kept checking his watch, pacing by the back room door. "Have you seen Frank?" he asked. I told him no. By 4 a.m., everyone knew. Frank hadn't checked in with anyone in over an hour. He wasn't in the office, not in the break room. The AP guy checked the front doors. No record of him clocking out. We called his cell. No answer. It went straight to voicemail. And Frank wasn't the kind of guy to leave his phone behind. He treated it like part of his uniform, belt clip and all. Security started reviewing footage. I remember standing in the asset protection office, watching the timeline scroll back. It was boring at first, the usual: stalkers, custodians, customers drifting through. Then, jump. The footage skipped. From 2:58:14 to 3:11:37, the timestamp continued, but the image froze. Like a single frame looped for 13 minutes, static when it should have shown motion. Dead quiet. We thought it was a glitch. Maybe the system rebooted mid-recording. But then we checked other cameras. Same time gap. Different angles. All frozen. Like someone had hit pause on the entire store. When the police came, they didn't find anything. No signs of forced entry. No missing items. Frank's keys, badge, clipboard, all accounted for. Except for him. I remember how his name stayed on the schedule for weeks after. No one dared erase it. Even when Omar officially took over as overnight supervisor, the board still showed Frank, electronics, 10 p.m., 7 a.m. Like we were all waiting for him to show back up and clock in again. Eventually, the district manager came down, said it was a non-criminal missing persons case, and told us to stop talking about it during work hours. We were told to let it go. Some of us did, others quit. I stayed. But I never forgot. I hadn't thought about Frank in years. Maybe once every couple Halloweens when someone joked about the ghost of aisle 6. But that night, watching him walk across those screens, it all came back. And not like a memory, like a warning. I spent the next hour pretending to work. I straightened up GoPros, cleaned the controller cases, adjusted a couple price tags. But I kept looking up, watching the TVs, hoping, or maybe dreading, that he'd walk past again. He didn't, but something else happened. At exactly 3:11 a.m., the same timestamp from that missing footage in 2007, all the TVs blinked, just once, no sound, just a single flicker, the same way they did when we update firmware on the back end, except no updates were scheduled. I checked the monitor settings. Everything was normal. Inputs locked, volume muted, all synced, but the wall had that feeling, like someone had just passed through. When I turned around, aisle 6 looked darker, only by a shade. But enough. I told myself it was just fatigue. My body was tired, my brain trying to play catch-up with an old memory. That's all. But I couldn't ignore the timing. 3:11 a.m. Same minute Frank vanished. 16 years later, to the second. And still, no one else saw it. No customers, no employees nearby. No one at AP, just me. I didn't tell anyone that night. I finished my shift, clocked out, drove home, ate toast without tasting it, slept badly, dreamed of static, woke up drenched in sweat with my clock stuck on 3:11. The next night I went back in. Same shift, same aisle, same feeling. But I kept glancing at that wall of TVs, like I was waiting for something to return, or someone. There was always something off about Frank's last shift. Not dramatic, not loud, just fractured, like a picture frame tilted by half an inch. At the time, we all chalked it up to tiredness. It was a long week. Floors had been stripped and re-waxed. Inventory counts were lagging. Corporate sent in a temporary assistant manager to observe procedures. That always messed with the rhythm. But thinking back now, that night was already wrong before he vanished. For starters, Frank showed up early. That was weird. He was always on time, not early, not late. But that night, I saw him walking in at 9:37 p.m. No one else was there yet, except a couple cleaning crew guys and me. He didn't say anything when he passed me near the soda pallets. Just nodded. I remember thinking he looked tired, not sleepy, more like worn down, like something had been gnawing at him. He went straight to the back office. That office had a window, thick glass. I remember walking past it an hour later and seeing him sitting there in the dark, Not doing paperwork, not making a call, just staring at the far wall, clipboard on the desk, pen untouched. Then, the first strange report came in. Samantha, our cosmetics stalker, said she heard someone coughing inside the men's restroom. Problem was, the restroom had been locked for cleaning since 8 p.m. Maintenance confirmed it. She swore she heard someone in there. Coughing, breathing hard, then nothing. Frank went to check, took his keys, unlocked the restroom. Empty. He didn't say anything after, just relocked the door, walked off. Later that night, around 2:40 a.m., I was working the paper goods aisle when the radios cut out. Just a sharp burst of static, then silence. Not low battery, dead air. Like the channel itself got erased. We regrouped near the break room. A few of us talked about power fluctuations or if the cleaning crew unplugged the repeater by mistake. Frank didn't join us. He was seen near the freezer section, aisle 24, standing still. One of the grocery guys, Edgar, said he tried to wave at him, ask something about shifts, but Frank didn't respond. He just stood there, facing the glass freezer doors, not looking into them, more like watching the reflection, standing about a foot back, staring. The cameras should have picked that up. They didn't. By 3 a.m., Frank had officially gone missing. Nobody saw him after that. And the weirdest part? His clipboard was found on the floor outside the TV section, right where I saw him walk past last night. The pen still clipped to the top, the schedule for the night unfinished. His own name circled 3 times. Back then, we all speculated. Maybe he got fed up and quit on the spot. Maybe he had a mental break. Maybe he was abducted, wandered off, died somewhere in the woods. But nothing ever added up. He had no family nearby, no drama, no warnings. His apartment was untouched, his bank account frozen. His truck never moved. It was like he stepped out of the store and out of time itself. When I watched him on those TVs, all of that came flooding back. But it wasn't a flashback. It was more like continuation. Like I'd just blinked and 16 years had passed in one frame. And now I can't stop wondering, what if he never left the store? What if he didn't disappear into the world, but into the building itself? There are places in that Walmart that haven't been renovated since the early 2000s. Air vents, access corridors behind the dairy coolers, a half-sealed stairwell near garden that doesn't go anywhere anymore. What if Frank isn't gone? What if he's still walking the same loops, just out of view? At 4:20 a.m., I walked to the back of electronics. There's a door we rarely use, leads to a narrow hallway connecting 3 breaker panels and an old fiber cabinet. Most people forget it's there. I unlocked it, walked slowly. The air was dry, dusty, fluorescent light barely working. I stepped past the breakers toward the old cabinet. There was something drawn on the wall beside it, a circle, ink faded, like marker. Could have been years old, but inside it, in small letters, 311. That's when I felt it. Cold air, not from the vents, not from the door. It came from behind me, even though the hallway was sealed. A draft, not strong, just enough to make the hair on my arms rise. And then I heard it. One footstep, not mine, behind me. But when I turned, nothing. Just that same flickering light, that same breaker panel, that same stale dust. I backed out, locked the door. Didn't write anything in the log. I told myself it was stress, but I knew better. That was the same hallway Frank used for spot checks back then. It was part of his route, and now it feels like it's his route again. The thing about night shifts is you stop noticing time. Hours blur, tasks loop. You stock, you straighten, you clean, you circle back. Sometimes I'll look up and realize I've been restocking phone cases for 90 minutes without saying a word to anyone. It messes with your perception. And after enough years, you develop muscle memory for the building itself. Every tile, every shelf, every creak under the waxed floors. You can feel when something's off, even before you see it. That's why last night stood out so sharply, because something in the rhythm had changed. I kept moving through the electronics section, pretending to work, dusting display speakers, checking battery packs. But my eyes kept drifting back to that row of televisions, hoping to see him again, or maybe just to confirm that he was gone. But what I got instead was silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. Even the hum of the ceiling fixtures felt muted, like the entire store had taken a breath and held it. I moved down to aisle 9, phone accessories. That's when I noticed it. The mop tracks. We use industrial floor machines here. Nothing fancy, just big, slow units that leave wide arcs across the tile. But the tracks I saw that night were narrow, jagged, like someone used a manual mop, dragging it back and forth in uneven lines. It wasn't part of my department, but I walked toward it. The streaks ended near a forgotten corner, a small alcove behind the returns counter, where we keep locked display phones and outdated signage. Nobody ever goes back there. I ducked in, half expecting to find a cleaning cart or a half-full bucket. Instead, I found dust, thick dust, undisturbed except for those wet streaks. They ended at the far wall and just stopped. No bucket, no footprints, no reason for that area to be mopped. And then I noticed what was taped to the wall. A work schedule, old, yellowed, water-damaged, but still legible. Week of March 12th, 18th, 2007. Frank's name was highlighted in pink. 5 shifts, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. His last week. I reached out and touched the paper. It felt wrong, like it had been laminated in cold. The ink was still sharp. No dust on top, like it had just been placed there. My radio crackled. Just static. No voices. But it startled me. I backed out of the alcove and returned to my department. No one nearby. The other night associates, Jordan from Toys, Mel from Health and Beauty, were probably still in their zones. Nobody had reason to be near returns. Nobody had reason to mop that space. And yet, someone had been there. Someone stuck in a routine long buried. I started thinking back to how many of Frank's habits had slowly disappeared over the years. We used to run temp checks every hour on the dairy fridges. Frank's idea. That got dropped after he vanished. We used to log every return manually with initials and timestamps. Now it's all barcode scans, no names, no accountability. Even the staff meetings, short, strict, standing in a semicircle at 9:50 p.m., ended the month after he left. It was like the store wanted to erase him, not out of malice, more like shame. But routines don't die easily. Sometimes they just wait. Later that shift, I walked by the back room to check for new inventory deliveries. Standard process, scan pallet labels, update the tracker board. But when I reached the clipboard hanging beside the freezer dock, I saw something odd. A single page had been inserted between 2 blank logs. Not typed, handwritten, same format Frank used, same handwriting too. I remembered it from years ago. Small, slanted, tidy. It listed 3 names. Mine was one of them, and next to my name, a time. 3:11 a.m. I didn't sign anything, didn't touch the paper, just closed the clipboard and walked out of the back room like I hadn't seen it. I kept checking my watch after that. 3:01, 3:05, 3:09. By 3:11, I was standing dead center in electronics, facing the TV wall. Nothing happened, no static, no flicker, but my radio cracked again, just once. Then silence. It's not just memories coming back, it's patterns. Frank didn't just disappear. He dissolved into the structure, the routines, the habits we dropped, but never replaced. Now those patterns are re-emerging, like someone pressing rewind, but only for certain moments, certain people, and I have no idea why I'm part of it. All I know is, I've seen him, and now something is watching me. You can tell a lot about a place by how it malfunctions. Most stores flicker, creak, settle into themselves. But here, the glitches feel deliberate, not mechanical, not accidental. More like subtle warnings. It started with the TVs, not the big wall I mentioned before, that stayed normal after the first night. But 2 days later, it was the end cap units near aisle 8. Smaller screens, portable displays running cheap looped content, the kind you barely notice. I passed them on my way to restock surge protectors. Out of habit, I glanced at the display. There was a short ad playing, a woman smiling, holding up a prepaid phone. Then the screen jumped, just for a second. Static, then a black and white image. It looked like the hallway behind the break room. One camera angle, no movement, grainy like analog feed. Then Just as fast, back to the ad. I stopped, rewound the display unit. We don't usually do that, but these little TVs have demo modes. I pressed the button on the back. It started over. Played normal, no static. I did it again. Nothing. I stood there pretending to check my list, watching it loop 5 more times. No glitch. But I saw it. I know I did. Later that same night, I checked with Jordan, the guy covering toys. He's young, into tech stuff, pays attention to displays more than most. I asked if he'd seen any weird flickers. He shrugged, said, "The freezer cams keep going fuzzy for like 3 seconds. You should ask AP." So I did. I knocked on the asset protection office window. Brent was in there, our usual AP guy, big, bored, always eating beef jerky. I asked casually, "Any of the cameras skipping again?" He nodded without looking up. "A couple. The dairy corner one's acting up. Just replaced the cable, still garbage." "Anything weird on playback?" He blinked, looked up at me. "Define weird." I didn't answer. He stared a second longer, then looked back at his screen. "Just static, man. These old cameras have bugs. Corporate doesn't replace them until they completely die." That was the end of the conversation. But I could tell he'd seen something. Or maybe he just didn't want to talk about it. The next flicker came in the break room. It was close to 2:50 a.m. I was the only one there. I had poured some old coffee, scrolling through my phone. The break room's got this wall-mounted TV nobody watches, always muted, set to some local news feed. Right as I was about to stand up, the TV buzzed. A low crackle. Then, the screen blinked. Not just a flash, a switch. It showed a hallway again. Same grainy black and white frame as before. But this time, it wasn't empty. There was a man standing at the far end, unmoving, back turned to the camera, just standing there like he'd been there for hours. The frame held for 2 seconds, then it snapped back to the news. I felt the coffee mug shake in my hand. I didn't tell anyone. I just left the break room, went straight to the cleaning closet, opened it, pretended to look for degreaser. Just needed a reason to be somewhere else. The hallway from that camera angle? I knew it. It's the one behind electronics, a back route used by management years ago to avoid floor traffic. Mostly unused now, but the cameras are still mounted there. I went. The hallway was empty. Lights steady. Air dry. But the silence was thick. I stood where the man had been in the video, looked toward the same camera mount. Then I turned around. The space behind me felt tighter than it should, like I wasn't alone. But the hall was completely still. Back at my station, I checked the display TVs again. The big wall showed the usual loop, but this time, the timing was off. The same footage repeated too quickly, like a bad copy. Faces smiling slightly too wide. Movements skipping subtly, almost unnoticeable unless you were really paying attention. Then, on the far left TV, the oldest unit on the wall, the image froze. A single frame, not the promo. A frame of the security feed, the hallway again, and in the corner of that image, a figure. Closer now, facing the camera this time, still blurry, still distorted, but visible. His shirt looked white, his build, tall, lean, like Frank. Then the screen resumed the loop, no static, no delay, back to the fake smiles. I stood there for a long time, not blinking. My reflection on the glass looked pale, drained, and in that moment, I felt it clearly. This wasn't about seeing a ghost. This was about being watched. Not haunted, monitored, as if something inside the building was replaying its memory. Not mine, the store's. And for whatever reason, it was trying to show it to me. The footage didn't lie. It was just too low res to be clear. I spent most of my next shift thinking about it. That frame on the TV wall, the static hallway shot with the figure. It lasted maybe a second, maybe less, but it felt etched into my brain. The way the head was angled downward, the shoulders slightly hunched, the clothes faint, like bleached shadows. I kept telling myself, it's just a glitch. Maybe the system glitched and pulled an old feed. Maybe someone looped archived footage from 2007 as some sick prank. But I couldn't stop wondering. What if it wasn't a playback? What if it was live? At around 1:45 a.m. I went to asset protection again. Brent wasn't there. The room was dark, chair empty, desk light off, but the monitors were on, 12 little screens all tiled on the wall. I stood outside the glass, watching. Aisle 2, empty. Break room, still. Outdoor garden center, no movement. Back hallway, frozen. That's what caught me. The hallway behind electronics wasn't looping live footage anymore. It was paused. Timestamp frozen at 3:11:02. Exactly the same minute Frank vanished back in 2007. I waved at the camera, even though I knew no one was watching. No change, just that one frame. Then I looked closer, squinting past the glare. The figure was still there. Slightly off-center, facing the lens now. Barely visible in grayscale, no details, just the outline of a man. But there was a trick to the image, a flaw in the resolution. If you looked too directly, the face blurred completely. But if you unfocused your eyes, like looking past a magic eye puzzle, you could almost make out features. Sunken eyes, a crease down the brow, lips slightly open, and something else. Something deeply wrong with the shape of the mouth. Too wide, too thin, like someone trying to smile through broken teeth. I walked around the perimeter of electronics after that. Couldn't focus, couldn't work. I kept looking over my shoulder, kept checking the cameras from different angles. By 2:50 a.m., I stood in front of the frozen frame again, this time inside the AP room. Brent had returned. He let me in reluctantly. I didn't ask, just pointed. "What's that?" I said. He stared for a second, then shrugged. Feed froze. I've restarted it twice. Still stuck. Might be the server. He didn't look concerned, but he didn't look comfortable either. "You see that guy?" Brent looked again. "I see a shadow. Doesn't it look like someone standing there?" He hesitated. Then, in a low voice, "That camera's been off and on for weeks. Probably nothing." I waited for him to say more. He didn't. I left the office, went to the hallway itself, the one in the frame. Same tiles, same walls, same smell, faint mold, old paint. Everything matched, except the figure wasn't there. I stood where he stood, looked back toward the camera mount. Then I turned around, slowly. Empty. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt watched. And that was the first time I noticed the hum. It came from the overhead lights, fluorescent buzz, nothing new. But under it, lower, was another tone. A flat, continuous frequency, like an old CRT TV left on with no signal. A static hum, just at the edge of hearing. I walked away fast. Later that shift, I checked the cameras again. Brent had restarted the feed. Now the frame was moving. The hallway live again, but the figure was gone. And the timestamp was normal. 3:37 a.m. Still, that one frozen image lingered in my mind. So I made a decision. After clocking out at 7:05 a.m., I didn't go straight home. I drove to the Walgreens down the road, bought a flash drive, nothing fancy. Then I came back the next night with a plan. At 1:30 a.m., I plugged the drive into the AP system when Brent stepped away for a smoke. I exported 10 minutes of camera footage from the hallway feed, including the freeze. Later at home, I plugged it into my laptop. The resolution was worse than I remembered. Grainy, bleached out, but the frame was there. And this time, I paused it manually, zoomed in. That's when I noticed something new. In the top right corner of the frozen hallway shot, half obscured by static, was a sign. White paper taped to the wall, barely legible, but I could make it out. Employee exit closed until further notice, March 2007. That hallway hadn't changed in 16 years, and someone, or something, and was still standing in it. There's something specific about aisle 17. It's where we keep seasonal inventory. One month it's Halloween masks and plastic skeletons. The next, inflatable Santas and string lights. After New Year's, it turns into clearance chaos. Broken wreaths, mismatched gift wrap, forgotten toys with damaged boxes. It's never quiet there. Even in the middle of the night, the aisle feels cluttered, full of too much air, too many objects packed too tightly. Shelves bend slightly under the weight. Plastic rustles without being touched. You can hear your own breathing louder there than anywhere else in the store. So when I heard my name whispered from the far end of aisle 17, I didn't think it was real at first. It was just after 2 a.m. I was restocking flash drives on a side cap near auto. I had earbuds in, one out, one in. Just low music, nothing loud. The voice cut through the static, soft, right at the edge of the aisle. David. I paused, took out the other earbud, turned my head. Nothing, just the distant hum of refrigeration. I walked toward the sound anyway. The lights flickered as I entered 17. Not unusual. That section pulls from an older panel, one we never got around to replacing, but the flicker came in a slow pulse, not random, almost like it was syncing with something. I moved slowly. The shelves were full of leftover July 4th gear, flags, red, white, and blue plates, sparklers nobody bought. Halfway down the aisle, I stopped. Then I heard it again. David, clearer this time, still soft, like someone standing just on the other side of a shelf, speaking without urgency. Not calling, just reminding me. I looked over the edge of the display rack, empty. No employees, no customers. But on the floor, halfway under the lowest shelf, was a clipboard. My heart locked for a second. I bent down, pulled it out, old plastic, yellowed edges. Paper clipped to the board was damp at the corners. It was a task sheet, the kind Frank used to hand out at the start of every shift. 3 columns, time, task, employee. My name was there. Under the time column, 3:11 a.m. again. I held the clipboard for a long time, felt its weight, checked the back for a label. Nothing. I considered taking it to AP or to Omar. He still works weekends as a floor manager, but something told me not to. Instead, I slipped the paper off and folded it into my back pocket, left the board on the seasonal shelf, walked out without looking back. That wasn't the last time I heard my name that shift. At 3:07 a.m., the store was dead quiet. I was in aisle 5, media and portable audio. It came again. David! No question mark this time, no whisper. Just a voice, direct, firm, flat, from the overhead speaker. I froze, looked up. The intercom light wasn't on. No one had pressed the button at the service desk, and yet the voice came through like an announcement. Just once, then nothing. I waited a few seconds, walked to the front of the store. The service desk was empty, lights dimmed. No one at customer service, no manager, no paging activity. I checked the intercom log. Yes, we actually track it. Button presses register on the console. The last one had been at 11:22 p.m. when Jordan called for a cleanup near produce. No other entries. So how the hell did the system speak my name? I didn't sleep after that shift. I lay in bed, phone in hand, replaying the hallway footage over and over, watching the grainy silhouette, zooming in, zooming out, pausing at frame 87, where the shape of the head turned slightly, like he's starting to look toward the camera, or maybe toward me. I don't know how many people this is happening to. Maybe just me. But the whispers, the audio feed, the repeating timestamps, they all seem to point back to one thing. Frank isn't stuck in some ghost loop. He's trying to reach out, and somehow he remembers me. There's a place in the store I haven't gone in years. The employee lockers. We all have one, but nobody uses them anymore. Most of us keep our stuff in our cars or tucked under the break room benches. The lockers are old, scratched, too narrow for anything useful. They smell like dust and steel. Last time I used mine was 2014, but after that shift, the whispers, the intercom, the clipboard, I found myself drawn back there. I didn't go straight in. I hovered outside the break room for a while. The hallway leading to the locker corridor always felt colder somehow, less lit, faint buzz of a dying ballast overhead. The lockers are in 2 rows, odd numbers on the left, even on the right. Mine's number 116. I passed it without slowing down. I walked straight to the end. Locker number 218. Frank's. Nobody ever reassigned it. Not officially. No name on the plate. But we all knew it was his. The top vent was dented from where he used to clip his pen. I remember that detail for some reason. I reached out, tested the lock. It turned. No resistance. I opened it slowly. The hinges groaned. Cold air drifted out. Not refrigerated air. Stagnant, sealed off cold. Like a drawer that hadn't been opened in years. Inside, there were only 3 items: a folded receipt, a dry erase marker, and a manager badge. Old style, navy blue, with a silver logo. Frank's name was still on it. I didn't touch anything, just stared. The receipt was from March 13th, 2007. 2 bottled waters, a notepad, a Sharpie. Total, $4.11 cash. On the back of the receipt, something was scribbled in the same tight handwriting I remembered from his task sheets. 1 sentence. Don't stay past 3:11. I stepped back, closed the locker. My hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, more like realization. Whatever happened to Frank, he saw it coming. He felt something, maybe even heard it, long before he vanished. And he tried to leave a warning. I sat in the break room for the rest of my allotted 15 minutes. Didn't drink coffee, didn't check my phone. I just kept picturing that locker. The dust, the ink, the warning. That badge, sitting alone on the shelf, looked too clean, like someone had wiped it recently. But that made no sense. Nobody cleans inside the lockers. Most of them are sealed shut from rust or bent doors. I went back out onto the floor at 3:04 a.m. Didn't matter what I was supposed to be doing. I walked the perimeter, watched the TVs, avoided aisle 17, passed electronics 3 times. At 3:11 exactly, every speaker in the store clicked once, not loudly, just a soft tick, all at the same time. No sound came through, no music, no voice, just the click, like a system syncing itself. Then everything went still again. On my way out that morning, I passed Omar near the time clock. He gave me a half smile. "Everything good, man?" I paused, then asked, "You remember Frank Dawson?" He didn't answer right away, then said, "Yeah, why?" I shrugged, just thinking about old names. He nodded, distracted, already moving on. But as I walked away, I heard him say something, quiet, almost to himself. "Locker 218. I turned, but he was already gone, and I was left standing there under the flickering light, wondering how many others remembered what we weren't supposed to talk about. There's a wall we all pass without seeing. Right near the employee entrance, across from the punch clock, there's a bulletin board that's half cork, half smudged whiteboard. It holds the same useless notices every month. Lost keys, mandatory e-learnings, safety reminders no one reads. But in the top left corner, behind a cracked plastic sleeve, there's a photo frame that hasn't changed in years. Employee of the Month. We stopped updating it sometime in 2015. Since then, the last recognized associate, a woman named Lydia who transferred to Albuquerque, has stayed frozen in place. Her awkward smile faded from sun damage. But tonight, something about that board felt rearranged. I noticed it as I clocked in. The picture was crooked, not slanted, completely replaced. Lydia's photo was gone. In its place was an older portrait, yellowed, low resolution. Someone wearing a blue vest, standing in front of the garden center doors. I leaned closer. It was Frank. I stepped back, checked the date on the plaque underneath. March 2007. No name, no explanation, just the month he vanished. The hallway was empty. The light above the board flickered once, like it was trying to focus. I reached out and touched the plastic cover. Cold. Static buzzed from the contact. I pulled my hand back. I checked the punch clock. 2 minutes before 10 p.m. I waited for someone else to come in, just to confirm I wasn't imagining it. Jordan walked through first. He barely glanced at the board, clocked in, said nothing. I asked him, "Did that picture always look like that?" He blinked, looked back. "Huh, weird. I thought it was someone else. They update that now." He shrugged and walked off. The rest of the shift felt mechanical. I was half working, half staring at every reflective surface in electronics. Kept thinking about that photo, how it wasn't just placed there. It had been installed, with new tacks, new backing, clean corners, like someone in the last 24 hours had carefully replaced it. But no one mentioned it. No manager brought it up. No bulletin update. Just Frank's face smiling faintly, locked behind a cloudy sheet of plastic. I took a photo of it on my phone. Later at home, I zoomed in on his badge. Barely visible. Fuzzy. but legible. His employee number, 6284. The same number I saw stamped at the bottom of that folded receipt in his locker. The same number etched into a clipboard I found behind the seasonal aisle. Like breadcrumbs being laid out for someone who still knows how to follow the old format. Around 2:30 a.m., I circled by the back office. Omar was sitting inside with two of the new hires. Training, maybe. His voice was low, calm, detached, like it always was during overnight briefings. But I caught one phrase through the door before he shut it. The protocols from 2007 still apply. Use the third log. That made me stop cold. The third log. We only use one logbook at night. Two, if there's a maintenance call. What third log? I waited. Later, when the office was empty, I checked. There was a drawer under the file cabinet I hadn't opened in years. Inside, a faded blue binder, no label. I opened it slowly. First page was blank, second page, handwritten checklists. Perimeter walked. Cooler doors locked. Security cage sealed. Each line ended with a time. One time kept repeating, 3:11 a.m. I flipped to the back. Last page, March 14th, 2007. The page was signed by Frank, just his initials, FD. Underneath that, a short sentence added in pencil, nearly erased by time. No longer applicable after tonight. I closed the binder, put it back, didn't tell anyone. But something had shifted. Frank wasn't just some unresolved mystery floating in the security system. He was recorded, documented, scheduled, like he had never been removed from the process. Only paused. There's a wall we all pass without seeing, right near the employee entrance, across from the punch clock. There's a bulletin board that's half cork, half smudged whiteboard. It holds the same useless notices every month. Lost keys, mandatory e-learnings, safety reminders no one reads. But in the top left corner, behind a cracked plastic sleeve, there's a photo frame that hasn't changed in years. Employee of the month. We stopped updating it sometime in 2015. Since then, the last recognized associate, a woman named Lydia who transferred to Albuquerque, has stayed frozen in place. Her awkward smile faded from sun damage. But tonight, something about that board felt rearranged. I noticed it as I clocked in. The picture was crooked, not slanted, completely replaced. Lydia's photo was gone. In its place was an older portrait, yellowed, low resolution, someone wearing a blue vest, standing in front of the garden center doors. I leaned closer. It was Frank. I stepped back, checked the date on the plaque underneath. March 2007. No name, no explanation. Just the month he vanished. The hallway was empty. The light above the board flickered once like it was trying to focus. I reached out and touched the plastic cover. Cold. Static buzzed from the contact. I pulled my hand back. I checked the punch clock. 2 minutes before 10 p.m. I waited for someone else to come in, just to confirm I wasn't imagining it. Jordan walked through first. He barely glanced at the board, clocked in, said nothing. I asked him, "Did that picture always look like that?" He blinked, looked back. "Huh, weird. I thought it was someone else. They update that now?" He shrugged and walked off. The rest of the shift felt mechanical. I was half working, half staring at every reflective surface in electronics. Kept thinking about that photo, how it wasn't just placed there. It had been installed, with new tacks, new backing, clean corners, like someone in the last 24 hours had carefully replaced it. But no one mentioned it. No manager brought it up. No bulletin update. Just Frank's face smiling faintly, locked behind a cloudy sheet of plastic. I took a photo of it on my phone. Later at home, I zoomed in on his badge. Barely visible. Fuzzy, but legible. His employee number, 6284. The same number I saw stamped at the bottom of that folded receipt in his locker. The same number etched into a clipboard I found behind the seasonal aisle. Like breadcrumbs being laid out for someone who still knows how to follow the old format. Around 2:30 a.m., I circled by the back office. Omar was sitting inside with two of the new hires. Training, maybe. His voice was low, calm, detached, like it always was during overnight briefings. But I caught one phrase through the door before he shut it. The protocols from 2007 still apply. Use the third log. That made me stop cold. The third log. We only use one logbook at night. 2 if there's a maintenance call. What third log? I waited. Later, when the office was empty, I checked. There was a drawer under the file cabinet I hadn't opened in years. Inside, a faded blue binder, no label. I opened it slowly. First page was blank, second page, handwritten checklists. Perimeter walked. Cooler doors locked. Security cage sealed. Each line ended with a time. One time kept repeating, 3:11 a.m. I flipped to the back. Last page, March 14th, 2007. The page was signed by Frank, just his initials, FD. Underneath that, a short sentence added in pencil, nearly erased by time. No longer applicable after tonight. I closed the binder, put it back, didn't tell anyone. But something had shifted. Frank wasn't just some unresolved mystery floating in the security system. He was recorded, documented, scheduled, like he had never been removed from the process. Only paused. The break room is supposed to be neutral ground. It's the only space in the store where the rules loosen a bit. Phones out, shoes off, heads down. It doesn't matter how loud the compressors hum outside that door. Inside, everything slows down. Nobody talks much. Just the microwave humming, vending machine groaning, and maybe a late-night rerun on mute. That's what made the light feel so out of place. I noticed it at exactly 2:59 a.m., not the flicker itself. That happens sometimes. But the pattern. The ceiling light above the furthest bench near the old corkboard blinked once, held, then blinked again. 3 pulses. Pause, then again. 3 pulses. Same rhythm every 30 seconds. I counted, watched, timed it. Always 3. I mentioned it to Mel, one of the overnight cashiers, when she came in for her break. Does that light always do that? She glanced up, unconcerned. It's been doing that all week. Probably just ballast burnout. She sat down under it without hesitation, but I couldn't stop staring, because that was Frank's seat. He always sat in that corner. Didn't talk, didn't eat, just sipped coffee and looked down at his clipboard, and the light never used to flicker there, not until now. After Mel left, I walked over and sat down in his spot. The light buzzed directly above my head. I looked around. Nothing special. Same cracked table, same vending machine with 4 expired sandwiches, same clock on the wall, 3:07 a.m. Then I noticed the board behind me. Not the whiteboard, the old corkboard they stopped updating years ago. It still had push pins stuck in it, a few faded flyers, one ancient staff party notice from 2005. But in the middle, someone had tacked up a small sheet of yellow legal paper. Fresh, no wrinkles, just one line, written in blue pen. 3:11 is not a time, it's a door. I didn't touch it, didn't take a photo. I just sat there, and suddenly I realized I wasn't alone in the room. I turned slowly. No one at the doorway. No movement on the camera bubble in the corner. But the feeling didn't go away. It was like sitting next to someone you knew. Not seeing them, but feeling the shape of their body near yours. Not threatening, just present. The light pulsed again. 3 quick flickers. Pause. Then again. I whispered under my breath. Frank? Nothing. No wind. No creak. No sound. But I swear I saw the corner of the paper lift, just barely. Like it caught a breeze. Even though the room was sealed. Even though nothing moved. I stood up. Went back to work. Didn't mention the note. Didn't sit there again. But later that night at 3:42 a.m., I walked past the break room again, just to glance inside. The lights were normal. No pulsing, no flicker. And the note was gone. Just an empty corkboard. Something had changed in that room. Something precise. Frank's presence didn't just linger. It reacted to light, to time, to proximity, like it was tied to that exact corner, that chair, that bulb, that minute. 3:11 a.m. isn't just when he disappeared. It's when the store lets him back in. The registers don't turn on by themselves. That's something I can say with complete certainty. Each one requires a key card or a manual override from management. They go into idle mode after hours, screen dimmed, locked out. No beeps, no inputs. They sleep like the rest of the store. So when I heard one chirp after 3 a.m., sharp and high-pitched, the unmistakable tone of a register rebooting, I knew something was wrong. It was 3:12 a.m. 1 minute past Frank's mark. I was restocking SD cards near checkout when I heard it. Beep, then another. Then the soft whirring sound of receipt paper pulling into place. I stepped closer. Register 6, the far right terminal, was lit up. Screen active, receipt printing. No one there. I looked left and right. No customers, no employees. Just empty space and that soft mechanical noise. I stepped behind the counter. The screen showed a blank transaction. No scanned items, no inputs. Just the message. Associate ID 62084. Frank's number. Then the receipt finished printing. I tore it off. No sale info, no timestamp. Just one line at the bottom. See you soon. I didn't know what to do. There were cameras pointing right at me. I thought about throwing the slip away, shredding it or flushing it, but something told me to keep it. I folded it and tucked it into my vest pocket. The register screen went black immediately, like someone cut the power. That wasn't the only activity. 10 minutes later, register 2 lit up for 3 seconds, then shut off again. No sounds, no receipt, but the screen flashed one frame before it went black. I couldn't be sure, but I think it said void, all caps, just that one word, void. I asked Mel during our overlapping duties and if she noticed anything weird at the front end. She hesitated, then said, I thought I heard someone behind me around 3 a.m., but nobody was there. What did it sound like? I asked. She frowned. Footsteps, like dress shoes, not sneakers, heavy, confident. She didn't say more, but I could tell she was unsettled. I replayed the incident in my head all day. Why register 6? Why Frank's ID? Why 312 instead of 311? It felt intentional, delayed on purpose. Like whoever, or whatever, was reaching through, missed their moment by 1 minute, or maybe waited until it was safe. When I got home, I laid out everything on my kitchen table. The 2007 receipt from his locker, the paper from the seasonal aisle, the slip from Register 6, all handwritten or printed at different times, all with the same handwriting or ID number, all pointing to one thing. Frank never left the building. Not spiritually, not metaphorically, literally. Some part of him, or something carrying his imprint, is still integrated into the system. The power, the electronics, the data logs. I opened my employee portal, searched for archived personnel files. Most of the older entries are locked behind manager access, but I found one note buried in an ancient directory, an error file. Frank Dawson, termination status, unresolved, date closed, NA. That's not normal. Everyone has a status, even if they quit mid-shift, even if they never came back. But Frank's file is still open, still flagged, still active. 17 years later, the back freezer's always been a dead zone. It sits behind receiving, past a loading dock we barely use anymore. The hallway narrows, the floor gets colder, and the lights don't reach the corners. No cameras, no radios, no cell signal. You walk down that corridor, and it feels like you're moving underground, like the store has a sub-level no one talks about. We only use that freezer for overflow storage during holidays. Otherwise, it stays sealed. I hadn't thought about it in years, until I saw the footprints. It was around 4:10 a.m., end of shift approaching. I was walking a final lap, checking displays, pretending not to listen for anything strange. I looped around back, near receiving, and stopped cold. There were wet shoe prints on the floor, clear, deliberate steps, not from someone dragging a mop, not from spill cleanup. These were actual prints, leather soles, heavy, rectangular, not like the slip-resistant sneakers we all wear. There were 6 in total. They began near the back wall, and they led directly to the freezer door, but not from it, to it, and then they stopped. No prints returning, no marks on the door, just 6 steps ending at the threshold, and the air was colder than it should have been. I stood there a full minute before touching the handle. It wasn't locked. That alone felt wrong. We always lock the freezer after every use. It's company policy. I opened it slowly. A rush of frozen air hit my chest. The inside light flickered once, then held steady. The freezer was empty. No racks, no pallets, no noise. Just frost on the steel walls, and silence. But something felt off. The floor. It was pristine. except for a small patch near the center. A circle in the frost where something had been recently moved, or stood, or breathed. I stepped inside. My boots echoed faintly. There was a faint crackling sound underfoot, melting ice. But that patch in the center didn't melt like the rest. It held, like a memory frozen into the metal. I didn't stay long. Closed the door behind me. Logged the incident as temperature check. Didn't mention the prints, but I kept thinking about those steps, 6 in total. The exact number it would take for someone to reach that door from the nearest corner, if they walked in a straight line. And the shoe shape. They looked exactly like what Frank used to wear. Polished black work shoes. Dress code before the switch to sneakers. He was the last one I remember who wore them consistently. I brought it up casually to Edgar, one of the older stalkers. He's been around longer than me. Did Frank ever work the freezer section? He gave me a strange look. Nah, hated the cold. Said it messed with his joints. Then he paused. Why? No reason, I said. But the look he gave me lingered, like he wanted to ask more, like he knew more. That night, at home, I looked through our internal docs again. Found a safety log from 2007. Archived, faded, barely legible. There was one entry, dated March 13th. Freezer door found unsealed. No explanation, no temperature loss. Resecured. Initials, FD. I checked the weather that night. Archived reports. It was 48 degrees in Flagstaff, dry and warm for March. No reason for a trail of wet, cold footprints. And certainly no reason for them to stop at a door that hadn't been opened in days. Unless someone had been waiting inside. Walmart doesn't talk about its ghosts. Officially, the company has zero tolerance for mythologizing workplace incidents. That's the phrase I saw once on a training slide. They don't want rumors. They don't want stories. They want silence, efficiency, routine. But every store has its stories, and some of them slip through. I started digging into archived emails, not from my inbox. Those get purged every few years, but from the store's shared drive. There's a folder tucked away in a long-forgotten branch of the system. Internal, Region 13, Incident Logs, Legacy. Most files are empty placeholders, but one folder, dated March 2007, was still active. Inside it, a .txt file called Follow-Up Prep. I opened it, no subject line, no formatting, just a list of names, first names only. Frank Omar Delia, Marcus David. My name. I scrolled to the bottom. A short sentence. Confirm closure protocol, do not forward, no signature, no header. Just that. I backed out of the folder, but not before copying it to my personal drive. Then I did something stupid. I checked the email archives for that week, March 12th through 16th. Nothing in my inbox. But in the sent items of an old supervisor's account, long since reassigned, there was a draft that had never been sent. It was addressed to a corporate email. The text was short. He's still here. We need a real protocol, not PR silence. Someone has to walk it. That phrase, walk it, caught me off guard. It was the same phrase Frank used during his nightly routine. Walking the perimeter, walking the cage, walking the store. I don't think it was about security. I think it was about keeping something in. The draft was saved at 3:13 a.m. 2 minutes after Frank vanished. No one ever sent it, but someone typed it. Someone knew. I printed a copy and folded it into the same folder as the other artifacts. The locker receipt, the register slip, the photo of his ID. They were becoming less like clues and more like relics. I wasn't building a case. I was preserving a pattern. The next shift, I asked Omar directly. He was restocking near the front, alone. I didn't waste time. Did corporate ever give you instructions after Frank disappeared? He didn't respond at first, just kept aligning clearance tags. Then he said, Frank wasn't the first. I waited. They don't say anything. They just stop calling. No meetings, no updates. They pretend the person never existed. You get a new login, a new badge, a new name on the schedule. I stared. How many? He shrugged. I've been with this company 23 years. That was all he said. Then he walked off. I stood there, surrounded by discount bins and half-priced soda, trying to absorb the weight of it. Frank wasn't an anomaly. He was part of a cycle, one that the company knew about. and quietly buried every time it restarted. Later that night, as I was logging out of my terminal, a notification popped up. System sync complete. Archive key 311 ready. I'd never seen that message before. It disappeared after 2 seconds. I looked in the system index. No archive by that name, no trace in the back end. Just a flicker, a hint, a digital ghost, and the same number, 3.11. They say you can't erase a person completely, but I think they've tried. I think Walmart's systems are built to overwrite memory, to sanitize anomalies, to suppress unresolved data. But something slipped through. Frank left too many impressions, too many marks in the code, in the walls, in the routines. And now he's pushing back, not violently, but persistently. There's something deeply unsettling about a uniform with no one in it, especially when it's been folded with care. I found it on a night I wasn't supposed to be working. Covered for Mel. She'd called out sick. I took the extra shift without thinking. Regret hit the moment I walked through the door. The store felt off from the start. Too still, the air heavier, the fluorescent lighting a little dimmer than usual. As I passed the break room to drop off my jacket, I saw the door to the locker corridor propped open. That's not normal. We keep it closed at all times. Fire code. But there it was, slightly ajar, light buzzing faintly beyond it. Something pulled me in. I walked slowly, the hallway narrowing with each step. Lockers lined both sides like silent watching eyes. Halfway down, around locker number 218, the air changed, cooler, cleaner, like the hallway had been scrubbed. That's when I saw it. On the bench beneath the lockers, folded neatly, was a full uniform. Old style, blue vest, white polo shirt, pressed khaki pants, black name tag resting on top. Frank. I stood frozen. The clothes were pristine, no dust, no lint, as if they'd just come from dry cleaning. But here's the thing. We don't use that style of uniform anymore. Corporate phased them out over a decade ago. There's no reason it should have been there. No employee wears those colors. No one even has access to that badge style. And yet, there it was, perfectly folded, resting like an offering. I didn't touch it, but I stepped closer. The scent hit me first, not rot, not mildew. It was bleach, faint but unmistakable. The same sterile smell that used to follow Frank after he'd finished closing checks in the chemical aisle. He was obsessive about cleanliness, said it cleared the static. I remember thinking that was a weird phrase back then. Now it makes sense. I looked around the hallway. All the other lockers were closed, silent, still. I looked down at Chucker 218. The lock was missing, not broken, removed. The bolt was clean, empty, and the metal plate above the vent had been wiped. No fingerprints, no dust. Like someone had just finished preparing the space for inspection or return. I backed away. The hallway felt tighter, like something invisible was standing at the far end, watching. Not approaching, not warning, just waiting. I returned to the floor without saying a word. Didn't mention the uniform, didn't tell Omar, didn't log anything. But all shift, I kept thinking about it. Why fold it? Why place it out in the open? Unless someone was expected to come back for it. At 3:11 a.m. I passed the hallway again. The door was closed now. No light beneath it. No scent. No sign anything had ever been there. I waited until shift's end to check. Walked back. Opened the hallway door. Bench was empty. Locker number 218 shut. The air stale again, like the moment had been reset, like someone came and took it all back. They say the best way to see the truth of a place is to watch it without being seen. That's why I asked to shadow Brent in asset protection. I didn't give a reason. Just said I was considering cross-training, wanted to learn more about internal systems. Brent didn't care. He shrugged, handed me an extra stool and said, "Just don't touch anything." That was 2 nights ago. And what I saw on those monitors, what I keep seeing, doesn't follow any rule I've ever understood. The AP room is small, windowless, feels more like a bunker than an office. There's a wall of screens, 12 split views showing every corner of the store. Each feed stamped with a live timestamp, a camera number, and a barely functioning frame counter. From 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., everything looked normal. Empty aisles, quiet floors, staff moving like ghosts between shelves. Then, at exactly 2:59 a.m., 4 cameras froze. Not blacked out, froze. Static crept in along the edges, like cold fog. One by one, camera 08, seasonal aisle, camera 11, electronics entry, camera 03, receiving corridor, camera 14, locker hallway. Each one stopped updating at 3:11 am. Not a second before, not a second after. I tapped Brent. He frowned. System glitch. Happens sometimes. But he didn't move to fix it. Didn't even check the feeds. Just turned the chair slightly and opened a Slim Jim. I watched as the other screens continued like nothing had happened. Only those 4 were stuck. I waited. At 3:12 a.m., they unpaused, all at once. No flicker, no reboot. Just resumed, as if nothing had interrupted. But I saw the differences. Subtle changes. In electronics, a pallet of TVs had shifted 2 feet to the left. In seasonal, a price tag that had been crooked was now perfectly straight. In receiving, a broom that wasn't there before leaned against the wall, and in the locker hallway. The door to locker Na218 was open, wide, no one standing there, but the light above it had dimmed, just slightly, like a dying bulb. I reached for the playback controls when Brent got up to use the restroom. Scrolled back, frame by frame, from 3:10:59 to 3:11 movement. At 3:11 freeze. At 3:12 active again. But when I zoomed into camera 14, the locker feed, I caught a single frame. A silhouette, half exposed by static, standing in front of locker Na218. Not tall, not short, average build. Wearing a blue vest, no face, just blur. And beneath that, etched into the frozen static, was a shape I recognized. A name tag. Frank. I exported the footage to my flash drive, labeled it 311218 locker feed, MKV. It took everything I had not to look at Brent when he came back. He sat down, checked nothing, yawned. System looks good, he said flatly, as if the freeze hadn't happened, as if it always happened. When I left the room, the hallway outside felt longer than usual, like it had stretched in my absence. Lights flickered once, then steadied. And at the end of the corridor, just before turning toward housewares, I thought I saw a blue shape round the corner. Just a blur. Gone before I could react. Frank isn't stuck in the past. He's in the feed, in the infrastructure, in the margins between seconds. And now I know where he waits. The intercom is only supposed to activate manually. You press the button, you hold it, you speak, then you release. That's how it works. Always has. There's no timer, no automation, no voice AI or scheduled announcements overnight. So when it came on by itself, with no one near the front desk, I knew something had shifted. It happened just after 3 a.m. The store was silent, no carts, no radios, no movement. Then the speakers clicked, just once, a hard, audible tick, then static, then a voice. At first it was garbled, like someone talking through a bad phone connection, then clearer. One word, David. Flat, calm, no inflection. It didn't sound like Brent, or Omar, or anyone on staff. It sounded dry, like a throat that hadn't swallowed in years. Then came another pause, more static. Then a second sentence. Please walk the perimeter. I froze, didn't even pretend to move. The lights didn't flicker, nothing else reacted. Just silence. Then the click, the hard reset of the system shutting off. I walked to the front desk. Nobody there. Intercom light off. The log showed no activity. Nothing was pressed. No one called. It had just turned on. And it knew my name. I tried to laugh it off. Told myself it was a glitch. Maybe an old recording. Maybe a weird looped announcement from years ago. But then I remembered something. In the 2007 security manual, the one I found in the old binder, there's a checklist. Night audit protocol. It includes the phrase, walk the perimeter every night at 3:11 a.m. to confirm closure. It's not about theft. It's not about safety. It's about containment. Frank used to say it too. Every shift, walking the perimeter, always at 3:11. Not before, not after. So I did it. Not because I wanted to, because something in me needed to. I started in electronics, past the camera wall, all monitors humming quietly, nothing abnormal. Then toys, then seasonal, then frozen. As I moved, I began to notice patterns. Lights dimmed as I passed, one by one, then lit back up once I was gone. Displays blinked briefly. End caps pulsed faintly with static. And in each department, one item was slightly out of place. A single doll turned the wrong direction, a can of soup upside down, a phone charger unplugged and dangling, like someone was moving just ahead of me, resetting the store to a memory I hadn't yet uncovered. When I reached Housewares, the intercom clicked again. No voice this time, just the sound of breathing. Shallow, measured, then a whisper. "You missed the back wall." I turned on instinct. The farthest wall in Housewares, the one with clearance toasters and boxes of light bulbs, was untouched. I walked toward it. Halfway there, I saw it. Taped to the wall behind a stack of discount fans. A sheet of receipt paper, torn at the top. The same type used by the registers. On it, in faint blue ink, "Thank you for walking the perimeter." Signed, FD. I didn't remove it. I left it there. It didn't feel like a message for me to carry. It felt like a confirmation. A signal that I'd done what he couldn't, or what he was still doing night after night, caught in the loop. Frank's voice isn't a ghost story. It's part of the system now. Embedded in intercoms, echoing in spaces that remember more than they're designed to. And now that I've heard him, I'm not sure I'll ever stop. There's a door in the store we're not supposed to use. Emergency exit number 3, behind the TV wall in electronics. It doesn't lead to the parking lot or the loading dock. It opens to a fenced corridor built during renovations in 2004. The fence leads nowhere, a dead zone between concrete walls and old HVAC vents. The door is sealed with an alarm lock. Opening it triggers a system-wide alert. I've only seen it opened once, during a fire drill, and even then, it took a manager key and a 10-second override. So when I saw it already open, just slightly, at 3:12 a.m., I knew something was very, very wrong. I just finished my perimeter walk. Same route as before. Electronics, seasonal, health and beauty, grocery, housewares, each section darker than the last, the air heavier. When I returned to electronics, I noticed the smell first. Dust, metal, old rain. Then the light above the emergency door flickered twice. Soft red glow pulsing like a dying heartbeat. And the door, thick steel, painted gray, rusting at the base, was open by less than an inch. But that was enough. I approached slowly. No sound, no footsteps. Just the hum of monitors behind me. I put my hand on the edge of the door. Cold, not cool. Cold, like the air on the other side hadn't moved in years. I pulled it gently. It opened silently. No alarm, no system ping. Just a quiet hiss, air equalizing between two sealed spaces. What I saw on the other side didn't make sense. It wasn't the fenced corridor I remembered. There were no chain links, no HVAC pipes. Just a long, narrow hallway, darker than anything in the store, lit by a single strip of white fluorescent light at the far end. The floor was clean, the walls were bare, no emergency signage, no exit map, no fire suppression sensors, just blank drywall. And at the end of the hallway, barely visible, a door, blue, faded, with a single rectangle on it, a name tag, Frank. I stepped back, closed the door gently, checked the panel. Still showed alarmed in red letters. Still locked, still sealed. But I had opened it, seen through it, and somehow the system hadn't responded, because it wasn't part of the store anymore. It was part of something else. Later that night, when I returned with Brent to check the feeds, camera 11, which covers the emergency exit, showed nothing unusual. The door looked closed the entire time. Even during the moment I stood in front of it, even while I opened it, no movement, no gap, no change. But I know what I saw. I know that hallway is real. Frank doesn't want out. He wants someone to see, to step through, to complete whatever process he started in 2007. And I think that hallway is part of it. Not a trap. Not an escape, a transfer. The TVs are supposed to show promos, commercials, happy families, the newest gadgets. But sometimes, late at night, they don't. Last night, the entire TV wall switched off at exactly 2:58 a.m. The screens went black, one by one. No static, no sound, just darkness, for exactly 1 minute. Then, at 2:59 a.m., they powered back on, but the images were wrong. Instead of ads, the screens showed the store, the aisles, empty, frozen, like a paused video game. And walking through the footage, slow, deliberate steps, a man, wearing a blue vest, white shirt, polished shoes, the same posture, the same gait. I watched for nearly 10 minutes. The man circled the electronics section, passed the TVs, walked toward the back hallway, paused, looked directly at the camera. His face was blurred, pixelated, almost like a corrupted file. But the tilt of his head, the way he held himself, it was him, Frank. Suddenly, the footage repeated, looped back to the start, like a broken record stuck on one frame. The lights and electronics flickered with the loop. The air grew colder, and I could feel him watching me, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as something still alive inside the store. I was staring at the TV wall when it happened. The loop repeated, the grainy footage cycling back to the moment the man reached the corner by aisle 6. This time, something changed. He stopped, paused, turned his head, slowly, facing the camera, facing me. His eyes, barely visible, caught the light just right. Dark, hollow, like empty sockets. Yet they held a weight, a depth, not quite human, not quite gone. I felt my breath catch, my heart pounding. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. He held my gaze, as if trying to say something without words, something urgent, something lost. Then the loop snapped. The footage broke. Static overtook the screen. The TV wall powered off, and the store plunged into silence. That moment haunts me. The feeling that he's no longer confined to those screens, that he sees me, knows me, and waits. I don't know what comes next, but I know one thing: nothing was ever missing. The store opened the next morning like nothing had happened. Floors swept, shelves stocked, cash registers humming softly, the usual hum of fluorescent lights. Everything was exactly as it should be, except it wasn't, because I knew. I knew Frank never left. Not really. He wasn't a missing person. He was a missing presence, a part of the store's bones. People walked past aisle 6 all day, looking for headphones, for batteries, for cheap televisions, but none of them ever saw him. None of them ever heard the whispers, or felt the flickering lights, or noticed the silence grow heavier. I walked the aisles, looked at the cameras, checked the break room light. The emergency door was closed. The TV wall showed promos again, but I didn't believe, because Frank was still here, waiting, watching, walking the same path he's walked for 18 years, looping endlessly in the space between seconds, between reality and memory, between presence and absence. I don't know if he wants to be found or forgotten. I don't know if he's trapped or choosing to stay, but I know one thing: he's still here, and nothing was ever missing.